Have you ever noticed how some people just have it figured out? They're calm, they're sharp, they always seem to be a step ahead, and it's tempting to assume it's because of their bank account. But here's the thing, money doesn't create those habits. The habits came first. Wealthy people didn't wake up one day already upper class. They built a set of daily behaviors that over time completely changed the trajectory of their lives. And the wild part? None of these habits require a trust fund. They just require awareness and a little bit of discipline. So today, I'm walking you through 6 habits that quietly separate people who are constantly leveling up from people who feel stuck. And by the end of this, you're going to see exactly which one you can start today. Let's start with something that sounds simple, but almost nobody actually does. They protect their time like it's their most valuable asset. Because here's a mindset shift. Wealthy, successful people don't think in hours. They think in outcomes. They ask, what is this hour actually buying me? Instead of just filling it with whatever pops up. And that means they've gotten really, really comfortable saying no. No to the meeting that could have been an email. No to the quick favor that eats an entire afternoon. No to scrolling for 45 minutes because it felt easier than starting the thing that actually matters. I used to be someone who said yes to everything, thinking it made me helpful, or productive, or likable. In reality, I was just handing my time to whoever asked for it loudest. Meanwhile, people who protect their time schedule their priorities first, then fit everything else around them. Not the other way around. Think about 2 people on a random Tuesday afternoon. One lets the day just happen to them, a random scroll session, a nap that wasn't planned, and I'll start tomorrow that becomes next week. The other blocks out 90 minutes, turns off notifications, and works on the one thing that actually moves their life forward. Same 24 hours, completely different results a year later. So here's your takeaway. This week, pick 1 hour that usually gets wasted and protect it like it's sacred. Guard it the way you'd guard your wallet. Once you start protecting your time, something interesting happens. You suddenly have space for the next habit, which is just as important. They invest in their mind every single day. This one's not flashy, but it's probably the biggest long-term multiplier on this entire list. Reading, learning, staying curious about how the world works. Successful people treat this like brushing their teeth. Non-negotiable. Daily. Almost boring in how routine it is. And I know what you're thinking. I don't have time to read. But this isn't about finishing 50 books a year. It's about choosing growth over numbing out, even in small doses. 20 minutes a day of reading. Listening to something that teaches you rather than distracts you. Having one real conversation that challenges how you think. That compounds. It's the difference between someone who's the exact same version of themselves at 35 that they were at 25. And someone who's rebuilt their thinking 5 separate times because they never stopped feeding their mind. I remember comparing 2 friends of mine. One who came home and immediately grabbed the remote, and another who came home and picked up a book or a podcast about something totally outside his industry. 5 years later, that second friend was the one getting promoted, starting side projects, having genuinely interesting things to say at dinner. Same starting point, different daily input. So here's the takeaway. Swap one entertainment habit this week for one learning habit. Not forever, just enough to feel the compound effect start. Knowledge changes how you think, but there's another habit that determines what you actually do with that knowledge. They think long-term, while everyone else chases short-term comfort. This is the classic marshmallow test, except it's playing out in real time, in every part of adult life. Health, money, relationships, career. The upper-class mindset consistently asks, what does my future self need me to do right now? Instead of, what feels good right now? It shows up in investing, putting money away instead of spending every dollar the moment it lands. It shows up in health, choosing the walk over the couch, the vegetables over the drive-thru, not because it's fun in the moment, but because future you is thanking present you. It shows up in career, taking the harder, less glamorous opportunity today because it sets up something bigger 3 years from now. And look, none of this is about deprivation or being miserable in the present. It's about widening your definition of worth it. Someone who thinks long-term isn't skipping every pleasure. They're just incredibly clear on which short-term comforts are actually stealing from their future. So here's your takeaway before your next impulsive decision. Spending, eating, scrolling, quitting, pause, and ask, will future me thank me for this or resent me? Let that answer guide you. Thinking long-term changes your decisions, but your environment changes them even faster. Which brings us to habit number 4. They carefully choose the people around them. This one's a little uncomfortable to talk about, but it's true. You become an average of the conversations you have most often. If everyone around you talks about problems, you'll start seeing problems everywhere. If everyone around you talks about possibilities, you'll start seeing possibilities everywhere. Upper-class thinkers are intentional about who gets their time and energy. They look for mentors, people a few steps ahead, who can show them shortcuts they'd otherwise learn the hard way. They look for peers who challenge them instead of just agreeing with everything they say. And to be clear, this isn't about cutting off people who aren't as successful as you, or becoming that person who only talks about networking. It's simpler than that. It's noticing who energizes you and who drains you, who pushes you to grow and who quietly keeps you comfortable and stuck. Sometimes it's not even about changing your friend group entirely. It's about who you call first when something big happens, or who you go to for advice. So here's the practical piece. Think of one person you talk to regularly who challenges you to think bigger. And make more time for that relationship this month. Even with the right people around you, one habit separates dreamers from achievers. They value consistency more than motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It shows up strong on day 1 and completely disappears by day 4. People who actually build wealth, health, skills, and success understand this. So they don't rely on feeling inspired. They rely on systems. A system doesn't ask, do I feel like doing this today? It just runs. Wake up, do the workout, sit down, write the pages, open the laptop, review the numbers. No emotional negotiation required. This is why tiny, boring, repeatable habits beat huge, dramatic, unsustainable goals every single time. It's not the person who works out for 6 hours once a month who transforms their body. It's the person who shows up for 30 minutes, 4 times a week, for 2 years straight. I've personally learned this the hard way. I used to wait until I felt ready to start anything important, and I'd lose entire months waiting for a feeling that never showed up. The moment I built small, non-negotiable routines instead, everything changed. Because I stopped depending on my mood to get things done. So, here's your takeaway. Pick one goal you have right now and shrink it down into the smallest possible daily action. Something so small you genuinely can't say no to it. Then just don't break the streak. And finally, perhaps the most overlooked habit of all. They stay humble enough to keep improving. This one's sneaky because success can actually work against you here. The more you accomplish, the easier it becomes to believe you already know everything you need to know. But the people who keep climbing decade after decade are almost always the ones who stayed curious instead of certain. They ask for feedback even when it stings a little. They study people who are further along instead of comparing themselves to people who are behind. They treat every mistake as data, not a verdict on their worth. It's the beginner's mindset. Staying teachable no matter how much you've already achieved. Ego whispers, you've got this figured out. Growth whispers, there's still more to learn. And the ones who keep winning long term are the ones who keep listening to growth. So here's the final takeaway. The next time you get criticized or corrected, resist the urge to defend yourself immediately. Just ask, is there something useful in this? That single pause can accelerate your growth more than almost anything else on this list. So let's bring it all together. Protecting your time, feeding your mind, thinking long term, choosing your circle wisely, valuing consistency over motivation, and staying humble enough to keep growing. None of these require money. None of these require luck. They require awareness and the willingness to build them, one small choice at a time. You don't need to master all 6 today. That's not how real change works. Pick the one habit from this list that hit you the hardest. The one where you thought, yeah, that's actually my problem, and start there this week. Progress beats perfection. Every single time. Let me know in the comments which habit you're starting with. I genuinely want to know. And if this gave you something to think about, hit like, subscribe for more of this, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, upper-class habits aren't bought. They're built, one small decision at a time.